Hello and welcome to The Print. I'm Janaki Pande, and today we're here with Sandesh Kadur, award winning documentary filmmaker, conservationist, wildlife photographer. And I think what brings us here today is that his latest documentary, The Nilgiris Shared Wilderness, is going to premiere on National Geographic for World Environment Day, which is June 5th. So I think let's thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Glad to
Uh,
be here.
I think I want to start by asking, is this the first time that the Nilgiris have seen such documentation? And what drew you to the Nilgiris to begin with?
Sure. So it's India's first UNESCO designated biosphere reserve. And I was surprised that despite looking far and wide, we found very little in terms of a documentary that's ever been made about the Nilgiris. So, working with Rohini Nilekani, who has a home there and lives there, um, she thought, wouldn't it be amazing to really bring a story about the Nilgiris to the people of the Nilgiris and do it at such a level that it would also reach the global audiences and bring a spotlight on this little known landscape of India. And we found a lot of literature, but very almost literally nothing in terms of a documentary of the scale about the beauty, the complexities. And we kind of went about making a beautiful love letter to the Nilgiris.
Right. And you have documented, from sea turtles in Mexico to king cobras in the monsoon in India, and even, clouded leopards in the Himalayas. So, what makes, how do I put this? What makes the Nilgiris different from the other ecosystems of India? Is there something that makes it stand out? And we've seen now that, climate change is impacting every aspect of ecology. So, have you seen the impacts of that in the Nilgiris as well?
Yeah, well, the first part of the question in terms of what makes it stand out, well, it's one of the world's 36 biodiversity hotspots. The Nilgiris are part of the Western Ghat Mountains. And the unique part about the Nilgiris is that it runs west to east, whereas the Western Ghats runs north south. So, in terms of its placement of where it is, it's a bridge between the Western Ghats and the Eastern Ghats, and it also marks the southern boundary for a lot of species, and its elevation about 2000 plus meters above sea level makes it a unique place for endemism, meaning species found in the Nilgiris are not found anywhere else on the planet. That itself is so unique. And you may have seen some of our star characters. It's not the tiger or it's not the black panther that's the star. It's a little known lizard called the Nilgiri salia. And it's not living out in grassland or somewhere in the wild. It's living in your back garden. And then we show a little story about what it feeds on, catching a fly, and it's a species of lizard that's not found anywhere else. And we drive home that point multiple times to show that the Nilgiris are such a unique landscape, supporting species found nowhere else in the world. That's what makes it so unique. And in terms of climate change and the effects in the Nilgiris in particular, I think we're seeing this globally. The
Right.
weather patterns are changing. When the rains come is different from what it used to be. And also, the Nilgiris is one of the first places in India where tea estates began. So the tea from the Nilgiris is so
Right.
important or famous. But the point is that from over a century ago, the British have been documenting, precipitation, the rainfall levels, and in those meticulous notes, we are able to find out that there is definitely a changing pattern in terms of climate, in terms of rainfall, in terms of when it rains, how much it rains, and the effects it's having on agriculture. So the Nilgiris have not been spared from the effects of a changing climate.
Right. And
Yeah.
not just the rains. I mean, I think in April, May, we've seen one of some of the worst wildfires in the area as well.
Yes, drought, fires. When it rains, it's heavy rains and landslides.
Right.
So both the effects are definitely felt.
Right. And so at a larger level, you mentioned that, it's also UNESCO World Heritage Site. Would you say that the government is then doing enough to, let's say, protect it, or is there more, that's needed for the area, or?
So the other unique part about the Nilgiris is that it's spread across three different states.
Right.
So you have the Nilgiris as part of Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, and Kerala. It's an area that's 5,500 square kilometers of incredible wilderness. And in the midst of all of this wilderness, across three states, there's definitely challenges in terms of policies, in terms of how you can protect such a large area. But the first step is always the fact that it has it's an area of global significance. It's an area of local importance, and the waters come from there. So definitely, the governments are trying their best to do as much as they can to help preserve the sanctity of the Nilgiris. And we, the people, can also come together to help efforts to preserve this delicate landscape. And our film went about to show that the wildlife here does not live contained in a national park, wildlife sanctuary, tiger reserve. There's wildlife everywhere. As a matter of fact, 70% of our film, or more than that, 80% of the film, was not shot in a protected area. It was
Right.
shot in a tea garden. It was shot in someone's backyard garden, front garden. It was shot in the city. It was shot in places that are not designated as a government specified place. So the whole message of the film is to encourage people to conserve what they have in their own backyards. And if they can do that, that'll help preserve the bigger picture.
Right. And I feel like, you've spent so much time there now documenting the area. I want to understand that, are there any specific steps that you have in mind when you say, help preserve the area? Is there something in particular that, people there could do, or anything of the kind?
There's a lot. It's a place that's so fragile. People need to understand that just changing their garden from exotic species to encouraging planting native species, and this can be not just in their home in the garden. It could also be a lot of the resorts and hotels that are coming up in the place. They can encourage areas that are made up of native species. And the thing is that we have thousands, over 3,000 species of beautiful flowering plants, endemic species that can be planted instead of exotic species, right? Uh, and that itself is like one step of bringing habitat back, because we can't stop development or tourism from coming into these places. But how can the tourism industry, the resort industry, how can they contribute? They
Right.
can also be part of the solution,
Right.
right? Not just be part of the problem.
Right.
And also not having plastics, single use plastics in all of these places where there's high levels of tourism
Mm-hmm.
is one of the worst things. And the Tamil Nadu government has imposed a lot of restrictions on bringing plastic to the Nilgiris. But I think it's something that needs to come from within each one of us to make it a mandate to not use plastic, single use plastics, and reduce, reuse, recycle. That's what each one of us can do to help better preserve the sanctity of these places.
Right, absolutely. And I think zooming out a little, I want to highlight that this is one of the first, if I'm not wrong, feature length documentaries in India to have, premiered across theaters, to have gotten this kind of attention. And as a documentary filmmaker, would you say that, the Indian landscape is, the Indian audience is somewhere, kind to documentary filmmakers, or do we have a long way to go?
Well, ours was a bit of an experiment. First it started off as a short piece for like YouTube, 20, 30-minute documentary. Then the stories and the wealth of stories in the Nilgiris was so complex and intricate. We decided, okay, we need to make one of the best film for the Nilgiris. And we continued working there for 2 years. And then we decided we didn't have a distributor. And then we said, okay, let's take it to the theater. All the little dots somehow connected and came together. And we thought we might have a 1 or 2 week theatrical release, but the audience, the people across India have been so kind and so receptive, and bringing the Nilgiris onto the big screen drew people in numbers that we had no idea would actually come out to support our film. And it got seen by hundreds of thousands of people across the nation, and it kept running in theaters for a good long time. And now it going on to the National Geographic platform means that it's going to meet millions of people are going to be able to see the beauty of the Nilgiris. And hopefully, what we want to, in our message, is make people more responsible, more ecologically conscious, and understand the fragility of this place. And that's our bigger message.
Right. And do you think this also opens the field up for other, documentary filmmakers who have such stories to tell?
Absolutely. I think The Nilgiris is a great example of a film that's been funded within India. It's a homegrown film funded by the Rohini Nilgiri Philanthropies, whose mission is to have a broader impact through powerful storytelling and strong education. And I think as something that's been started here, it should definitely encourage and inspire more filmmakers and storytellers to show that there is hope that we can also do something along these lines.
Right.
Yeah.
And now I think I'm curious personally to understand whether there was, in this long process of filming the Nilgiris, was there a moment that, stayed with you long after you've sort of left the Nilgiris for the moment?
Yeah, no, it's still in my heart even now. The moment when the hornbill chick, the great hornbill, comes out of its nesting hole. So no one ever knows exactly when that moment will ever happen, because it takes 90 days, 100 days, 110 days. It's a long process, and there's no finite date as to when it'll actually come out. So we thought the nesting was over, but I really wanted to go and see it because our team had been going there and filming for a good number of days. And then when I went, we weren't sure if the hornbill was still in the hole. It's a very unique nesting behavior. And then it just happens that the day I was there, that this fledgling that no one had seen for several days decided to come out of the nesting hollow. And that one moment was so heartwarming that as soon as we captured it, I knew that this was a beautiful ending to our story. It was hope. And it wasn't even in the middle of the jungle. It was in the middle of a coffee estate with people walking back and forth. And there's a huge tree with one nesting hollow, and it's been a multi-generational use of that tree by this hornbill couple. And and it just showed that this hornbill's coming into a changing world. It has to now adapt. So the hornbill became our bookends. We started with it and we ended with it. So that's how we brought the whole story together.
Right. And are there other such, stories about India's natural world which are still missing from the screen, which
India, with 1.4 billion people, we are a home to such a wealth of stories. There, you can't definitely isolate wildlife and people. We are in this together, and we need to learn to continue into the next generation, working together, living together, because we are intertwined, we are inseparable. And there's no other country that I can imagine in the world with the kind of wealth of stories of people and wildlife like what we have here. And that's also been the reason why we have so much wildlife, is because the natural world is interwoven into the fabric, into the ethos of everything that we do. In our religion, cultural practices, everything, you have nature. Nature is an integral part of what it is to be human, is the connection to the natural world. And why do we need to continue to save this? Well, those species, the wildlife, they are the ones that are the protectors of everything we need to survive. They protect the water, they protect the climate. They are the guardians of all of these things that's very important for all of us. And that's why we need to conserve their spaces, because their spaces is what gives life to us.
Right. And as you sort of, move forward, even though you carry the Nilgiris with you at heart, what are you now sort of, what's the next project? What's the next landscape or conservation issue that you're now looking to explore?
So I'm very much a mountain person. I've spent a lot of my time in the mountains, in the Western Ghats, and I've also worked on a project in the Himalaya. And we've just finished an expedition to the easternmost part of India,
Mm-hmm.
Arunachal Pradesh, and that landscape, where we are on an. We've just finished an expedition going into the heart of water, the Siang. So we are just wrapping up a documentary about that landscape, while also working on another film about the bigger, the greater, the Himalayas, the roof of the world. So I'm just coming from Ladakh, and it's another incredible landscape to work in. It's just the fact that I've been blessed with an incredible team of researchers, directors, our associate producers, a lot of folks from the Nilgiris. So we were able to make this film because of the support of the people from the Nilgiris, who really stepped up in every way possible to help us find stories and bring these stories to life. And with our team of camera folks in the field, continuously, every single moment they were there throughout. So a big shout out to the amazing team at Fellis, whose heart and soul is in bringing these stories to life.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for
Thank you,
joining us
Janaki.
today.
Yes.